Good day everyone, especially to our teacher, Mr. Melvin Libuna. In today's topic entitled Prescriptive Analytics Research Material, which are our free finals practical exam for data analysis. So the first topic that we will tackle is all about prescriptive analytics. When we say prescriptive analytics, it is a type of data analytics which is use of technology to help businesses to make better decisions through the analysis of raw data. It can be used to make decisions on any time horizon from immediate to long term. So, when we say prescriptive analytics, it is a form of advanced analytics which examines data or content to answer the question, what should be done or what can we do to make the project in success. Also, it characterizes the techniques such as graph analysis, simulation, complex event processing, neutral network, and the recommendation engines to make the project. Prescriptive analytics is a term coined by IBM and is usually called the final frontier of an analytics strategy. So, in creating data for analytics through design experiments, which are we need to review first our data, which is try to look at time results of your experiment with a critical eye. Ask yourself there is a questions which is it complete or did you forget something? Do you need to collect more data? And did you make any mistakes for collecting data? And after that, we need to calculate an average for the different trials of your experiment if appropriate. Then make sure to clearly label all the tables and graphs, which include the units of measurements, which are the volts, inches, or the grams. And also place your independent variables on the x-axis on your graph and the dependent variable on the y-axis. Next is, what is active learning? When we say active learning, it is the subset of machine learning in which a learning algorithm can query a user interactively to label data with the desired outputs. In active learning, the algorithm proactively selects the subset of examples to be labeled next from the pool of unlabeled data. The fundamental belief behind the active learner algorithm concept is that a machine learning algorithm could potentially reach a higher level of accuracy while using a smaller number of training levels if it were allowed to choose the data it wants to learn from. So it means that active learning is an approach to instruction that involves actively engaging the individuals with the course material through discussions, problem solving, case studies, role plays, and other methods. So, interact with content through active learning has some compelling advantages over delivery mode lectures, which is it helps to maintain student or the individual's concentration and deepens learning towards the higher level skills like critical thinking. Therefore, active learners are allowed to interactively post queries during the training stage. These queries are usually in the form of unlabeled data instances, and the request is to human annotator to label the instance. This makes active learning part of the human in the loop of paradigm where it is one of the most powerful example of success. So next is, how does active learning work? So active learning works in a few different situations. Basically, the decision of whether or not to query each specific label depends on whether the gain from querying the label is greater than the cost of obtaining that information. This decision making in practice can take a few different forms and based on the data scientist budget limit and other factors. So, the three categories of active learning are the stream-based selective sampling, pool-based sampling, and the membership query synthesis. So, When we say stream-based selective sampling, in this scenario, the algorithm determines if would be beneficial enough to query for the label of a specific unlabeled entry in the dataset. While the model is being trained, it is presented with a data instance and immediately decides if it wants to query the label. This approach has natural disadvantage that comes from the lack of guarantee that the data scientist will stay within the budget. So, in stream-based selective sampling, it is the unlabeled data sample. It is continuously being sent from the data source to the active learner. The active learner has to decide whether to ask the oracle to level the current data sample or not based on a query strategy. In addition, stream-based learning or a learner receives one sample at a time and has to determine whether or not to select the instance to be labeled by general labelers. Next is membership query synthesis. When we say membership query synthesis, this is not applicable to all cases because it involves the generation of synthetic data. The active learner in this method is allowed to create its own examples for labeling. This method is compatible with the problems where it is easy to generate a data instance. Next is pool-based sampling. When we say pool-based sampling, this is the most well-known scenario for active learning. In this sampling method, the algorithm attempts to evaluate the entire dataset before it selects the best query or set of queries. The active learner algorithm is often initially trained on a fully labeled part of the data, which is used to determine which instances would be most beneficial to insert into the training set for the next active learning loop. The downside of this method is the amount of memory it can require. And the last question is creating data for analytics through reinforcement learning. When we say reinforcement learning, it is a goal-oriented approach which is inspired by behavioral psychology that allows you to take inputs from the environment. This implies that the agent will get better and learns while it is in the use. This is similar to how us humans learn from our mistakes. We are basically functioning with a reinforcement learning approach. There is no training pace because of the agent learns trial and error instead using the predetermined reward system that provides inputs about how optimal a specific action was. This type of learning does not need to be feed data because it generates its own as it goes. So, reinforcement learning is the science of decision making. It's about learning the optimal behavior in an environment to obtain maximum reward. And it is a machine learning training method based on rewarding desired behavior and punishing undesired ones. In general, reinforcement learning agent is able to perceive and interpret its environment, take actions, and learn through trial and error. So that's the end of my discussion for today. Hopefully you will get some knowledge for this topic. Thank you.